Hey everybody, Robin from Backscatter here, and in this video we're looking at the CNC YS-D3 Duo strobe. This strobe adds Olympus RC automatic TTL flash power, giving you the most accurate automatic flash power ever from a CNC strobe when shot with an Olympus or OM system camera. This is huge news for all of you TG, Pen, and OMD camera shooters out there. So in this video, we're going to break down this strobe and everything you need to know about it, as well as how it compares to all the other strobes on the market right now. Let's jump across the street into the Backscatter studio for a closer look and to figure out what you get for your money with the YS-D3 Duo. Lined up in front of me are all of the most popular strobes for underwater photography that we sell here at Backscatter, lined up in price from least expensive to most expensive. Now, all these different strobes have their own stated specs from the manufacturer, but we don't always know how the manufacturers develop those specs. We put every strobe that we sell through our own set of controlled in-house tests to form a fair basis for comparing any given strobes. We'll get into the details of what we found about the D3 Duo's performance in that section of the video, but for now, let's talk about its price and where it kind of fits in this overall lineup. The YS-D3 Duo is about $850, and it does sit towards the higher end of the strobe spectrum. It's right next to the YS-D3 Mark II at about $800. The only difference between these two strobes is the Olympus RC flash mode that you get on the Duo. If you're an Olympus or an OM camera shooter, even if you already have a YS-D3 Mark II, it's worth looking at the Duo as an upgrade to your lighting just for the benefit of that automatic flash power alone. One of the unique things about the YS-D3 strobes towards this end of the strobe spectrum is that they're the only strobes with a straight flash tube compared to the circular flash tubes found on some others. Now, generally speaking, a circular flash tube is going to produce a beam with a wider angle and a warmer color temperature than a straight flash tube strobe. The YS-D3 Duo, when you add on the optional dome diffuser, produces a beam that rivals, and in some cases even beats, the wide-angle beam quality out of some of these circular flash tube strobes. That doesn't mean that they don't have their own features and benefits that justify their prices, but for $850, the YS-D3 Duo produces a beam that's a great value for wide-angle lighting. Let's take a look at what you get in the box. There's the strobe itself, there's the flat diffuser that goes on the front, and a 1-inch ball mount installed on the bottom to connect to your control arms. You also get the little hex or Allen key to install and remove the ball mount, and other mounts like a YS mount if you use flex arms are sold separately. You also get a little tube of CNC O-ring grease. We'll use that for the battery cap on the back of the strobe and the electronic sync port on the bottom of the strobe. The YS-D3 Duo is a medium-sized strobe. Some are larger and some are smaller, but this overall fits pretty squarely right in the middle of the lineup. It's made of polycarbonate materials, so it is pretty light, and it's not going to weigh down your suitcase as you're packing, and when it's loaded with batteries in water, it's actually just slightly positive. So by the time you've got it added onto your rig, it's not going to require much buoyancy compensation, which is convenient when you're aiming the strobe, having it out on the end of a control arm, and not having to fight its weight underwater. It does have a metal heat sink band built into the front. That's what's going to help dissipate the heat from the flash firing. It's even available in two different colors. There's both yellow and red versions. Looking at the front of the strobe, we can see two straight flash tubes going horizontally across. There's also one LED for the aiming or target light. The black piece around the front is the bayonet mount. That's where you mount the accessories like the diffusers or the CNC snoot with just that simple click on, click off operation. The included ball mount is on the bottom, and you just swap that out with those two different bolts to put on different mounts. There's two different synchronization ports on the YS-D3. Up front is the optical sync port. That's where you're going to plug in a fiber optic cable for the waterproof transmission of light coming straight up from your camera and housing, or you unthread this cap for the electronic connection, which is not waterproof, and you must have this cap on to protect that port if you're not using it. This port is how you hook up a hardwired electronic cable coming up from your housing. The majority of users on this strobe are going to be using the optical sync port. You'll want to use the electronic port if you wish to take advantage of electronic hardwired TTL. Hardwired electronic TTL is generally more accurate than just optical slave TTL, but it does require a few more components and variables to make it work. Because there's so many more variables involved in that setup, if it's something you need, just give us a call here at Backscatter. We can talk you through all the specifics on that. The strobe is powered by 4 AA batteries in the back compartment. It's going to give you about 220 shots when set to full power. We recommend replacing the batteries after every 2 dives, unless you're shooting a whole lot at higher powers. Then just play it safe and replace the batteries every dive. You shouldn't ever use alkaline batteries in the strobe because you're not going to get a maximum performance out of the strobe. You need to use nickel metal hydride rechargeable AA batteries such as Eneloops. Eneloops are the only AA battery that we sell for strobes at Backscatter. The battery compartment cap just presses onto the back of the strobe, and then those 3 tabs that are around the outside of the cap rotate and click into place, and you know it's locked when the little white triangles on there align. There is an O-ring on this battery cap that you do need to maintain. Every time you're swapping batteries out on the strobe, you want to inspect this O-ring visually. You should remove it, clean it, and re-lubricate it when it gets dirty, or if you notice it's picking up a bunch of debris. Once the cap is clicked into place on the strobe, you always want to check and just ensure that you cannot see the O-ring and that it's not pinched or rolled out of that groove that it fits in, because if it is, the battery compartment will leak. The good thing is that the battery compartment is sealed from the rest of the strobe body. So if you do get a leak, it's not going to totally kill the strobe. You can simply open up the back, dispose of those batteries that are in there because they are compromised, and then rinse the inside of the battery compartment out with fresh water. You can take a little fiberglass electronic cleaning brush, such as those that we sell here, and scrape those contacts down at the bottom of the strobe until they look corrosion-free. If the cap is still looking shiny, you can keep using it, but if the cap is starting to show some corrosion, swap it out for a replacement. It is always a good idea to travel with a spare one of those battery caps, just in case. Once you ensure everything is dry inside, you can drop in some new, fresh batteries, seal it back up, and the strobe should come right back to life. But if there is an issue, just contact us here at Backscatter and we'll get you all sorted out. There are 2 dials on the back of the strobe, one for mode and one for brightness. There's also a button in the middle to activate the aiming light, which has 2 different power levels, one at 300 lumens and another at 150 lumens. There's also an indicator on the back, which once the strobe is turned on using the mode dial, will turn green once the capacitors are charged and the strobe is ready to fire. The mode dial is also color-coded with an LED backlit behind the entire panel. As you turn this on to the first position, which is TTL, you'll see the panel glow blue. As we move to the next position, RC mode, it'll turn red, and then as we go to manual, it can actually be in 2 different modes that are selectable by pressing and holding the target light. The green panel is for manual flash mode, and if you press and hold the target light button, it'll turn into pre-flash cancellation mode. You'll want to use this if your camera has a pre-flash on it that you cannot disable or get around. If your camera supports manual flash power, then you want to shoot with the green mode because that's what's going to save your camera's battery, allow you to fire faster, and ultimately get you better photos. The brightness dial should be considered a multi-function dial because it does work differently depending on the mode the strobe is in. If we go to the TTL or the RC flash modes, the brightness dial is your exposure compensation. You'll use the printing on there that's outlined in white or the outer ring around this dial. Moving this to the end position is neutral. That's your baseline TTL setting. Then you have up to 2 stops, less bright or brighter, to adjust that TTL flash compensation to get the shot dialed in exactly how you want it. If you're in one of the manual flash modes, the brightness setting treats it more like a guide number, where all the way to the left is the lowest power output at guide number 1, or you go all the way clockwise to the right to reach the maximum brightness of guide number 33. Whatever that power is set to is how bright the strobe is going to fire. The control dials are textured and stand out on the back of the strobe. Even when the strobe's way out on a control arm and you can't easily see it, it is still easy to feel the dials and click them into place just using muscle memory once you get familiar with them. We also like that these dials don't have an infinite spin like some dials do, where you have to use those dials to control menus on the back of a strobe. These just go all the way to one side or the other. So it's easy to have your brightness set all the way to one end of that dial, and then just count the number of clicks that you want to bring it down or up. So even if you can't see what that setting is at, you'll still know exactly where your strobe is set to. One thing we're not a huge fan of on these dials is that the printing for the numbers on there is really small, and the design of the dials is such that you can only see the current setting you're on. It kind of obscures every other setting because of the way the dial has the little cutout on there. So it is kind of hard to see all the options on the dial other than the one you're currently in. The first performance-based thing we'll evaluate on the YS-D3 Duo is its maximum brightness, which is expressed as a guide number. When we're talking about guide numbers, we're just talking about maximum brightness of the strobe. Higher guide numbers mean brighter strobes. Brighter strobes will have an easier time sending their light farther through the water to reach your subject. Now, we don't always get to know how different manufacturers test their strobes and develop the stated guide number. Their practices are not standardized across the industry, and you get different results testing strobes in air versus testing in water. To equalize things, Backscatter takes every strobe that we sell into a controlled testing environment underwater using a light meter in a custom housing set to ISO 100 placed 1 meter away in front of the strobe. The YS-D3 Duo has a manufacturer's stated guide number of 33, but under our testing conditions, the brightest we could measure out of it was about F32. But the difference between 32 and 33 when we're talking about guide numbers is practically immeasurable. That's a minimal amount of difference in that amount of light. So it is safe to say that the D3 Duo performs up to the manufacturer's stated spec. Next, we're going to look at the beam pattern or the shape of the flash beam. Now, in general, strobes with a straight flash tube, when shot without a diffuser, are going to produce a narrower beam, whereas circular flash tube strobes without a diffuser will typically be wider and much more even, but we always test every strobe underwater to see exactly what their flash beams look like. There's basically 4 different flash beams you can get out of the YS-D3 Duo. You can shoot it undiffused, you can use the included flat diffuser, the optional dome diffuser, or for macro, the optional snoot. Shooting the D3 Duo without any sort of diffuser produces a pretty elliptical shape, fairly hard-edged flash beam. This is best used for fish portraits, macro shots, or wide-angle shots where you just want to light up part of the scene. When you add the included flat diffuser, it makes it a much more practical wide-angle tool. This has a huge effect on making the strobe beam way more evenly spread out over a much wider area. It really kills that whole elliptical hard edge beam effect. This is what you want to use for general wide-angle lighting, but things go to the next level when you add on the optional dome diffuser. The dome diffused beam of the YS-D3 Duo is one of the best looking wide-angle strobe beams out there right now. It looks nearly as good as most of the more expensive circular flash tube strobes, but it stays under that $1,000 price point that most circular flash tube strobes sit above. Now, to be fair, those circular flash tube strobes we're comparing against will produce a beam like this without a diffuser and can be brighter, faster, and have plenty of other features that make them worth their higher price. But for $850 plus the $55 diffuser, the YS-D3 Duo is an outstanding value for great wide-angle lighting from a medium-sized, straight flash tube strobe. We also have some macro options. We can swap out the diffusers and add on the snoot. The snoot that CNC produces for the strobe isn't too expensive at about $80, but it is basically just a funnel that goes on the front of the strobe. It doesn't optically focus any light through it, so you lose more brightness from the strobe than an optical snoot would. It's not that easy to aim because the target light doesn't exactly match what the snooted flash beam is going to light. The good thing is there are third-party snoots available for this strobe, some of which are optical and many of which are easier to aim. Color temperature of the strobe is how warm or cool that light appears out of it. This is always measured in degrees Kelvin, with higher values being cooler and more bluish looking, and the lower values being warmer or more yellowish looking. We always test the color temperature in air, because once you go underwater and ambient light starts mixing in, it can give you a false reading. We measured the D3 Duo to have a color temperature of 6600 Kelvin. This is a little cooler than natural sunlight, but underwater, this produces very accurate, natural-looking colors, and it actually looks a little better the deeper that you go. We typically prefer strobes to be a little warmer, like in the 5500 range, but we're still quite happy with the D3 Duo, and it does get just a little bit warmer when you add on a diffuser as well. Recycle time is the amount of time that it takes for the flash capacitors to recharge in between shots. Recycle times are calculated differently from different manufacturers because some strobes will not fire again until the capacitors are fully recharged to the power level that the power setting is set to, whereas other strobes will fire as soon as they're able to, regardless of how much charge is actually in the capacitors. That's the way we like it, because we want a strobe that's going to fire when we take a picture, regardless of how bright it is. If we get a shot that has some light in it, we can do a whole lot more with it than a shot that has no strobe light at all. CNC gives the YS-D3 Duo a stated recycle time of 1.7 seconds in between full power shots, but we weren't quite able to get it that fast. If we waited for the strobe to recharge back to its actual full power in between shots, we were clocking it at closer to 3.7 seconds. If we pushed it to see how fast we could get it to fire, regardless of the actual brightness, we were able to get it down to about 2.2 seconds in between shots at full power, and those shots were coming in about a full stop less bright than the actual full power. Of course, if you turn that power level down, recycle time does get faster. It's important to be aware that if you're shooting the strobe repeatedly at higher power levels, heat will build up, which will increase that recycle time as you fire the strobe more and more. Flash duration is how long the flash tube is lit up when the strobe fires. This is something that's measured in hundredths of a second, and this is where our review takes a bit of a deep dive into camera nerd territory. We've tested the D3 Duo to have a flash duration of over 1/600th of a second at full power. Most current SLR and mirrorless cameras have maximum flash synchronization speeds of about 1/200th up to 1/400th of a second, meaning they don't risk catching the flash or making the flash appear less bright if the shutter speed is set faster than the flash duration. So the strobe easily passes this test. The only thing to be aware of is that if you have a compact camera or a mirrorless camera with a global shutter, it's not subject to maximum flash synchronization speed because they don't have a mechanical shutter. So you can run the shutter speed as fast as you want on those cameras and still synchronize with the strobe. If you're shooting a compact or a global mirrorless and your shutter speed is set faster than 1/600th of a second, you will catch the flash from the D3 at full power, making it appear less bright in your shots the faster your shutter speed goes. Just take that shutter speed back under 1/600th of a second and you'll get the total brightness of the strobe. Also, keep in mind, as you turn down the brightness of the strobe, its flash duration gets faster too. The YS-D3 Duo fits right into that $850 price point and is on par with performance with the non-Duo version, the YS-D3 2 at $800, but Olympus and OM shooters should consider the Duo for its automatic RC TTL flash power. Its other best features are the outstanding wide-angle beam quality when paired with the optional dome diffuser, and its versatility as a medium-sized, bright, easy-to-use strobe that's practical for both macro and wide-angle lighting. Our only caution would be to maybe consider something smaller or more snoot-friendly if you're shooting just macro, or to consider what a larger, more expensive, higher-end circular flash tube strobe will get you if you're doing purely wide angle. Bottom line is that for under $1,000, the YS-D3 Duo is a great all-around strobe for basically any underwater photographer. If you need just one strobe to do it all for under $1,000, give it serious consideration. You can always give us a call or send us a message here at Backscatter, and our team will be happy to walk you through all of these facts and compare the benefits of different strobes and what's best going to suit your underwater photography needs. We have free lifetime tech support on every purchase, we ship internationally every day, and we actually dive, shoot, test, and service everything that we sell. I'm Robin from Backscatter, signing off, and thanks for watching.